Hey, everybody, welcome back. Hire and Fire podcast. Jeremy Miller, your host, with my co-host, Amanda Anderson. Hello.
Hello.
The hell is up, everybody? We're back for episode number 2 on our little mini interviewing series. So if you caught the first one, we tried to break down the manager side of all of this stuff. And we're going to go candidate side this today, which I think most people would care more about. I mean, honestly,
I would say
outside of managing teams and wanting to grow into a manager.
Unless you're an interviewer, unless you're a hiring manager, you don't really care.
And even if you're an interviewer, you've been an interviewee, and there's a good chance you'll be that again. So this is basically just applicable to everybody, of course. So we're going to break it all down. And if we have some time at the end, we're going to try and get into some whatever that word is, remote interview stuff for today's COVID world. So we will break that down. So we'll kind of talk. I'm assuming that'll interweave in this just because it changes everything.
I would say just because so much has now, that is just the way we interview at this point.
No doubt.
But I was doing remote interviews for my staff years ago before COVID hit.
Meaning that you guys were both at home?
No, I was at the office, but it was my rock star. It was my Casey girl. She was traveling after she graduated. She was in Europe. And so we did a remote meeting with her, or interview with her, so we could for sure hire her because she was amazing.
No, I think it's great. I think we talked about this last time too. I'm a big phone interview guy to get started. For me personally, with my process, I know what I'm looking for on paper. So if it looks good on paper with the right experience, because I'm hiring experienced people, so that changes things, of course.
Yep, I was on the opposite spectrum.
Yeah. So by the time someone is coming into our location, we're already interested in each other. First date's over, shall we say? Right?
God, that's
met this person in person, about to, right? But we had a remote first interview. So we can break down all the stuff for anybody going through the interview process. Obviously, we're going to give this a lot from a staffing firm's perspective because that's a lot of where a lot of these anecdotal stories come from. But we've all been here interviewing with HR, interviewing with a team of people. If you're in the IT field, which we are on the staffing side, then how do you handle those technical screens? How do you handle meeting with the boss's boss?
Yep.
You know, that type of thing. Because you know there's a good chance that guy or gal is going to hop in at the end. Interviewing with panels, that's weird. You know, because it's bigger than just a team per se. You know, when you have the panel and it's you on one side and 73 people on the other. Have you ever had like a legitimate 8+ person group?
Not that many.
One time.
Not that many.
Like literally having to scan my head. Let's see if that gets picked up on radio. Scan my head left to right while talking. You know what I mean? Like starting way over to the left. Like I'm talking like damn near 9 p.m. on a clock, if you think of it that way, and then scan all the way over to almost 3 p.m., right?
Yeah.
Or 3 whatever, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's tough because eye contact, good communication ability, like
serious.
Your interpersonal demeanor it's the whole thing, right? If you're in person, for sure.
And anyone who's afraid of public speaking or large groups, that is intimidating as
God, I know. We can get into some of that stuff too. Like, when do you whip out the super cheesy shit? Like, why don't you tell us about one of your weaknesses? And then the guy goes, well, man, I don't know. I tend to overwork.
Work too hard.
Some people need to, back me off of my dedication and focus to my craft.
Yeah, I'm a perfectionist.
Hell of an answer.
Actually, perfectionist can legit be a fault. So I have said that one before.
Yeah, so candidate-based interviewing. We don't have any stats. I didn't look up anything on purpose, but I would assume that the majority of people, if they were surveyed, would say they do not like interviewing. Would you agree? Disagree?
100%.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone.
Weirdo. I know that. I like it. I don't seek it out, right?
But that depends on the format. So like if you're going out to have drinks or dinner and just really meet someone, like, you know what? We're going to get rid of the formalities. Let's just go grab a drink and schmooze and get to know you. Now that I think is a really good technique, to be honest, because people will let their guard down
as a candidate. You mean?
A candidate,
okay, got it.
Even hiring manager. Yeah. I think that's a good way to get someone to let their guard down, because there's so many techniques to use when you're hiring, and so whether or not you're trying to intimidate, or it's what are you trying to pull out? What are you trying to assess?
Yeah.
So if you're trying to assess how well, say, an account manager would schmooze a client, I would personally take them to dinner or happy hour and see how they schmooze.
Would you tell them, hey, this is our schmoozing section?
We're
going to evaluate you on your level of schmoozability. No, I agree. You actually mentioned this on the last go around about, as a manager, kind of like watching how people, anything about how they react, say after an interview. Did they follow up like a thank you letter?
How are they beforehand? How did they treat the staff when were they rude at any point? Were they late? Were they disorganized? Could you watch them and they've got crap? Okay, but I can't look down on people who are like that, because I'm a little like that.
Just a little frazzled?
Like a little frazzled. Like, okay, where's this? And you're kind of getting situated. But like, just know, if you're looking to interview, you are being watched from the time you first email back and the words that you use and how you do it, to the time when you shake hands and you have accepted a job. At least in my world.
Yeah.
I'm assessing things from start to finish, of like, how do you carry yourself? How is the eye contact? Is it too much? Is it a little weird?
Yeah, totally.
So you do have to be, then that's why I think going out and going somewhere else to get them to relax, depending on the job. Now it depends on the job, but that's what I think, if I could redo a lot of the stuff that I would do, especially with my kind of like account manager people, is to get them to get their guard down.
Yeah. So, and relax. And that's tough for any candidate, right? If you're interested in what you're going for, nerves, you would assume, would be a part of the process. So like, if we take it from the beginning, now remember, we're talking about interviewing. So this isn't really about getting your resume ready and pretty, although it could be from a, what do you bring to the interview?
Sure.
We're basically starting this of once you've been at a minimum as a candidate requested to interview. So if we put them in order per se, it's kind of what I mentioned before. A lot of times you start with HR. Now, typically it depends on the size of the organization. And we touched on this a little bit last time, but it bears repeating. As a candidate, remember, HR, it means a lot. That's a lot of different things all in one little phrase. So are you talking to somebody that handles generic HR, or are you talking to somebody that is in their talent acquisition team?
Sure.
Can you tell what the interview is going to be like with HR? So for example, if you're working through a firm like ours, then we should be able to tell you a heads up of what to expect. Hey, this first phone discussion or whatever is going to be with HR. Generically, I would expect this to be a little less technical, just because that's not this person's strength.
Correct.
They're probably just going to want to validate certain things, because remember, their job is to essentially be a first level screening.
It's more of do you fit the qualifications or not? Yeah,
I would almost argue that you're more worried about saying something stupid and screwing it up for yourself than you should feel like you need to win them over.
Yeah.
Because I feel like
be accurate, only say the right dates, be prepared with information about yourself, right? I'm guessing, because for those listening, I have not had an interaction with HR.
She is an HR virgin when it comes to this process, which is really cool. So if you're walking into that, it's natural to be nervous.
I wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know. So gain whatever information you can. Again, if you're working through a staffing company, ask, what should I expect? What is this person like? If you're going straight through, it's a little tough. The best you can do is maybe a little bit of research on LinkedIn about what this person is and who they are. I would encourage you to be very inquisitive at the beginning of this interview.
I was just going to ask, what would you recommend, any do's and don'ts?
I would be asking up front, just flat out, help me understand what our goal is for today's discussion. Do you know what I mean? Like, should I be expecting
prior to the interview?
Well, I mean, even as the phone interview, if it's a phone or face-to-face interview starts, I would love to get some information about the company. I want you to get some information about me as a candidate, or do you have a specific goal of what we're going to work through? Because if you can get them to show their cards a little bit, then you kind of know how to guide your answers. Because you would assume they're going to give you some type of answer. Hey, this is a little bit of an informal screening. I just want to make sure as the HR person at so-and-so company, we are giving you an adequate understanding of, the basics of compensation plans and benefits and blah, blah, blah. You never know. Or are they going to dive into the job? It's if you ask them up front, a lot of times they'll give you the answers to the test is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to ask do you try to figure out why the position's open with them? Because maybe my guess, okay, so I have no idea. So I would guess that they don't know a lot of the team dynamics and stuff.
Most often, no.
So they're probably not going to know that kind of information. But you could figure out if it's an added position or replacement.
Yeah, so again, just being inquisitive about what the situation is, because the more info you get, is this replacing somebody or a new position? Is this like a really critical hire for this cool project? Whatever you can get out of them, you can basically tailor your answers. I don't want to put it this simply, but a lot of ways it is. Your goal is to get through this, right? Because you want to get to the manager.
So
you want
make
to
sure
avoid
you give
shooting yourself in the foot more so than you want to make yourself look amazing.
Correct.
Because unfortunately, like it or not, HR generically really is more likely to look at the shit you suck at. Like, what is your weakness?
What don't you have?
They're more likely to be critical, right? How can we eliminate this person from consideration?
Correct. Because they're trying to weed out and only send really good candidates to their hiring manager.
Yes.
So if you've got 2 years of experience, but they want 3, maybe be ready to talk that up.
Right.
I mean,
I agree.
Not because you're trying to convince them, but you're trying not to get disqualified.
Yes. So, validating the job description compared to what you expect in the interview, being audible, ready to have good answers, generic stories about what you've done related to the job.
Okay.
Basically an overview. I have X number of years of experience and, based on what it looks like this role is hiring for, I really think
they're the gatekeeper.
So you just you want to give them a sense of confidence that as they push you through the process, that they look good and that you're a good use of it.
Just gonna say that.
Yeah. If you're not familiar with the old fancy sales term, it's called WIFM, WIIFM. What's in it for me? So if HR is trying to do anything, a lot of it would be to not look bad. By sending crappy candidates to the manager.
Yeah.
But you never know. Some of these groups are really cocky and they feel like they do a really good job. And a lot of times they know that they are just the beginning of the interview and they're being very cordial and nice. So you could have a situation where you have a 20-minute, what kind of feels like a waste of time HR phone interview.
Check the box.
And then other times you can feel like that person was grilling you. So that's kind of what I mean by the beginning of just trying to understand, what should I expect from this call? See if you can get some info out of them.
Okay.
Getting after that, so we can go a few different directions after that process. So whether you meet with the team, whether you go to a technical expert or even an assessment, which is very different.
Yep.
Or if you go straight to the hiring manager, which of the 3 do you want to dive into? Because they're not necessarily in that order, right? So it doesn't have to be sequential.
We touched on it last time of like, do you do the team and then you? Do you do you and then the team kind of gives their little, nod of the cap or tip of the cap? So everyone does it different. I would even interchange it with my process. It was literally of like, who can meet with them
it does
at this time?
A lot of times it is not a certain order, but equal number of times they know what the plan is. So, in general, for any of these steps, I mean, be prepared. Obviously, do some research prior on who you're meeting with. This is not hard as long as you have the name to go onto LinkedIn, especially, and search first name, last name, comma, company name.
Would you ever ask specifically who you're meeting with?
I would love to. I think the staffing firm for sure should be able to tell you that. A lot of times even HR gives you those agendas, and people's titles.
I was just going to say, I would want to know the titles and be like, are these technical people? Are we looking for just culture fit? Yeah.
And asking for that information is never a problem. Let's say you're actually meeting with the hiring manager and the next step is going to be talking to a technical expert. Asking what that means is a super valid question.
Yeah.
It's not like, you're asking for the answers to the test, just, okay, help me understand. Is this somebody who works here? Is it about your environment, or is it more party? Or is it an online assessment? Am I writing code? What should I expect?
And can you ask, what are you looking for?
Yeah, totally.
Because I would
be inquisitive again.
Be inquisitive.
Yeah,
because
that shows interest as well.
Yeah. And for me, it would show that, okay, this is how this person's going to be working too. They're not going to just take something I say and go do it wrong, and then I have to have them do it again. They're going to ask questions. So I would say that would look good.
And that's the information that you're hoping to gain. And that's what you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
If this is a new ad for the team, if this is a backfill, right, you would love to know that information. New ad, is the team growing? Where does the team need help?
I was just going to say, where are the gaps?
Is there a gap there? Or did somebody get let go and it really was because of a deficiency, or how you can... Thinking that the job is just on paper is a really, really silly thing to think, right? It's getting into the head of who you're speaking with. What are they trying to do? Are they super urgent and they need somebody immediately? Or is it like super duper important that this person is able to walk on water, hit the ground running with this certain level of experience?
Well, because it does matter, because I've had people come in with the expectation that we were going to give them this whole roadmap, and depending on the job, it was like, no, you're making the roadmap.
Yeah,
we don't have a roadmap.
Yeah.
So you have to suss that out. You just have to.
And again, be inquisitive. If any of these individuals or whatnot tell you things along the process, keep validating that with the other group. Hey, after my interview with HR, they told me blank. Whether it has to be with how big the company is growing, or how quickly they want to get somebody in the door, whatever the information is, validate that with the rest of the team. Hey, is that true? Or I was in on the interview with the hiring manager, and now I'm meeting with you guys, the team. Here's kind of what I was told. Do you guys tend to agree with the manager on this? I mean, have a conversation. It's definitely not one-sided.
This working here has been very informative for me. I've never understood, prior to ever being here, what the value really is of a recruiter and working with someone. I literally never understood even how it worked or why it was.
I remember it vividly.
Yeah, and so
you guys do what? You get people jobs like me,
and you get me past the gatekeeper. That would be very helpful. And you have inside information. I've never had that.
Yeah, and there's so much information to gain. If you're working through a staffing company and they can't answer basic questions about the manager or about the team, it's probably a sign that they don't work with this group a lot. Or maybe the individual recruiter that you're dealing with isn't as audible ready on that info. So ask some questions. Hey, what do I expect? I mean, we should know that. That is one of the major benefits of working through a firm like ours. We should have more. You should never go in blind to an interview through a staffing company.
Which you do on your own. You do.
Totally.
No matter how much you research, you are still blind.
Yes.
And there's so many times where I've been blindsided.
What if the manager's super duper quiet and you're like this boisterous, outgoing person? And then we can talk about a lot of this stuff about how do you, because I'm a talker. So that's cool and good. Most managers would rather have a talkative candidate. But the amount of times we've had candidates rejected because they weren't able to shut up in an interview. where I've had to give them, hey, the manager asks you a question about something.
Answer it, then stop.
Answer it and then stop and ask them, does that answer your question?
See,
that's an easy tech, because everybody, when you feel like the answer wasn't received well, most people just keep fucking talking.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about just a psychology piece of it too is people like people who are interested in them. So I always made sure that I got whenever I could, because some hiring managers are like stone and you just can't get them to talk. But like, if you can make a connection and get that hiring manager to talk, one, you could probably get some more information. They'll be a little bit looser with you, but they're going to like you for being interested in them.
Yes.
Don't overdo it. Like, please don't overdo it. Don't be like, well, tell me about your kids. Like, Don't be like, no. Stay professional. But like, I mean, something as simple as, how'd you get into this? And tell me how you went down this path. And like, how'd you get to where you are? Because that's fantastic. And then, or impressive, and mean it. Don't throw smoke up someone's, whatever.
Yeah.
But get that with any of these, whether it's the team, the hiring manager, even their superior, if it's their boss, showing an interest in them as a human in their career, because they're just a few years ahead of you. Or a few more, but they were sitting in your chair at one day.
Yeah, and again, they're probably going to tell you what they want for this person by getting them talking about really anything.
Yeah.
Because you're referring to just being able to bond. And by that, I mean...
So how I got a ton of my
Yeah, you could be in someone's office and they have a picture on the wall of fishing, and that is what you go after. Maybe that's your thing. Maybe it's not.
If you are also a fisher and you see them fishing, be like, oh my God, where did you go? That's amazing.
Some people they put some information on their LinkedIn profile about things that they might be interested in, whether it's in their career or not. Try and bring it up conversationally. Just don't want to be random. Hey, I saw that you did so-and-so on, that can be a little, but I,
figure out how to work it in.
Yeah, I mean, people hire people they like.
Correct. Well, that's what I talked about in my vlog about this. Of like, we have unconscious bias.
Yeah,
we
like
just
it or
do.
not. Sure.
Like it or not, you just do. And one of that is we hire people like us and that we like. So find that connection.
But get the manager talking. That's the idea, right? Like the manager, I mean, this is another stupid example, but the manager might say, hey, we're looking to bring somebody into this group that actually thinks different than we do.
Yes, you need to know
we
that
love it
stuff.
that, one of the things that everybody in this group loves is blank. We're really collaborative. We love helping each other. I don't know what the hell it is. Just understanding that from the beginning, because if you don't gain that info, then by default, you're kind of guessing where your responses are going.
Oh, 100%.
And you could be going down a wrong road.
I've had people do it.
Yeah. And they think they're freaking killing it, super comfortable conversation. But meanwhile, they just negated themselves as a candidate by telling almost too much in the wrong area.
I had this one person interview this young man, and he would not shut up. He was not qualified. I'm typically a very nice person, so I wasn't like, interview's over, you need to leave, right?
You're like, yet?
Yeah. But we were standing up, walking out, and he was still sitting in the chair. And it was to the point where I'm like, we're gonna have to like ask him to leave. It was so bad. Like, if you've got, I understand that some people, don't have good EQ, emotional quotient, but you got to pay attention. You have to pay attention to the nonverbal cues.
And that's why if you're the talkative type, that little thing that I mentioned earlier is worth its weight in gold, because you can stop yourself. You don't have to wonder if you answered the question or not. Give a 2 or 3 sentence answer, and then does that answer your question? The manager will automatically either give you the affirmative and you did good, or you accidentally went down a road that you didn't mean to, and then they bring you back to center, whatever that is.
Yeah. I'll do things like ask, does that make sense?
Yeah,
does
you go.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or, is that kind of what you were looking for? That little just gentle, because there are times where that gives them the opportunity to be like, well, I hear what you're saying, but I'm asking more X, and they'll try and redirect you. So just that quick little check-in is never bad either.
Yeah. So in general, dress the part. Always, in my opinion, I think it is way worse to either be or feel underdressed than it is to feel overdressed.
Yes.
So don't make that mistake because you can't undo it.
Yep.
Even via phone or via video. If you're crazy and you want to go full-blown newscaster on it and wear a suit on the top and sweatpants on the bottom,
I want someone to do
go
that
for it.
for
I mean,
me.
if you understand how the camera works, if you're remote and it's via phone, that's just, basically trying to just get comfortable over the phone with a basic interview process. But if you're in video, have the camera level to you, even if you have to, prop it up more so than you would. You want the camera on your laptop to be steady. Don't be on your stupid phone. Don't ever. People can hear everything. When you're outside, they can hear
the wind,
the airplanes going over you, the birds chirping.
And it's very distracting as a hot interviewer. Yeah. It's very distracting.
Yeah, just never use a phone. Use a computer.
You don't want anything to take away from what you're saying.
Yeah, just use a random background. I don't care if it's the cabinets in your kitchen or a relatively plain wall. Just have it be innocuous so that it's not something that would steal away from you being the focus. Yeah.
And that is literally feedback I've given a young interviewer back in the day of like, you have a lot going on and I only heard half of what you said. So like for future interviews, like just a heads up, you don't want anything to detract from what you're trying to convey to me.
And in person, this can matter too. I have a habit where when I bring people into the conference room here, I put them on the side of the conference room that faces the window. Because I know that the most thing that would be likely to be distracting is being able to see through the glass wall behind me and random people walking around.
Yeah.
So that's almost by default going to be distracting for the other person. So myself leading the interview, I put them over there. A lot of times you'll be given the option to take a seat. So pick which one you want on purpose.
Yeah.
Pick a good one.
Well, that's just it. Think of where you should sit as far as distractions go. Because, you personally don't even want to be distracted.
Have a pair. If you sit down and the sun's right in your eyes, ask them if you can close the damn shades. That matters.
That actually does. If someone sat there uncomfortable and you could see that they're uncomfortable, yes, after a minute or two, I would probably personally say something, but I'm interested to see if they do something and that's what I mean. Everything is being watched of like, did you just sit there for 10 minutes uncomfortable and you didn't say anything?
Right.
Like you said, have a pair. Come on.
You don't have some gumption, do you?
Yeah.
So we used to work with a very, very large medical device company up here called Medtronic, and a lot of people know them.
Yep.
They have a great reputation here in town.
Yes, they do.
But they have. We figured out in my old life that they loved it when people were prepared with some knowledge about the company. Okay,
because they have a lot of pride in their company,
and they do, right?
Do, yeah.
So their former CEO or the founder's name is Earl Bakken. Okay, so we used to friggin' tell people like, go look this up, and we've had people get the job because they name dropped Earl Bakken in an interview. Now that's it's a stupid example, but be prepared. There's another one up here. There's a really big insurance company up here called Allianz Life Insurance.
Allianz.
And the name itself, when you look at it, if you're not familiar with them, almost people will say Allianz because it's Allianz.
Yeah.
Nothing makes you look dumber in an interview mispronouncing the effing company's name.
Have you had that with Pyra?
Well, I've had people directly ask like over the phone, how is it pronounced? But in a moment where it makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's like being in a social situation where that one person, like I'm Jeremy. So it's like if somebody keeps calling me Jimmy, eventually I have to interrupt them. So, don't put that on the other person, because that's one of those, they will judge you because you made them feel a little awkward. even if it's not fair. Or you can get judged if you don't know information about a company way more than you look good if you do know.
If you ask a company like, so what do you do? Or what do you like?
What do you guys do here?
We had that as
happens all the time.
Agency, and they're like, so what do you specialize in? And I was like, you didn't even look at the website. You'd have to go to the homepage and look for 3 seconds, and you could tell what we did.
Yeah.
So like, just big faux pas. Like,
we're talking basic preparation, right? If this is news to you or you feel like you've been slacking, then listen up, right? Dress
we should have told everyone to get a notepad and paper.
Yeah. Well, if you're like me, you could take it on your iPhone right now, but bring something to write on. Even if you don't use it, the look of a tablet or a portfolio is very professional.
Even have some fake questions written down if you don't have a ton. Make it look like you thought about this last night. Like I've had people that will go through their page and they're like, yep. And they'll kind of flip through. It just looks professional. Like it looks
and I'm the type
prepared.
Of interviewer where I get the discussion started on questions. So if you don't have any, then I can wing it. But I'm a little surprised that you're here and you don't have any.
What if we were
questions?
Yeah, are we McDonald's? Are we what? Are like you don't
even
care
if
at
you
all?
Know this industry really well. It just could be whatever makes you curious. So we talked a good amount about HR. The team again is an interesting battle because you have to assume that the team is involved on the interview process for a reason. So if I had to recommend anything, I'm just asking them what that is. Like, what are you guys looking for? Like, what do you think the department needs?
Yeah.
What are you
not
guys
necessarily
hiring
management,
for? Yeah. I mean,
do
you guys think that you need somebody who's really good at A, B, and C? Or do you think it's more X, Y, and Z? Whatever that is.
Because the team could have a different answer.
And not only could they have a different answer, but again, if you're smart at the beginning, they'll kind of a lot of times give you the answers. So the team can be tough because more often than not, the team by default ends up going a different direction with the interview than the manager does. So,
they want to know that you know your shit because they don't want to sit there and be like, here's the answer. Here's an answer. Here's some coaching.
Yeah.
That's what I would guess, especially with IT and coding and development and stuff. I would personally guess that the team is looking for someone who at least isn't going to be a pain in the ass for a month or two.
But shit, this is tough, right? You could have somebody who views any addition to the department as a threat.
Correct.
And you have somebody who's kind of working against you. That's why I really encourage you to be inquisitive of the beginning of a team interview. Get to know a little bit of the people, what they do here, kind of what their goal is for these interviews. They'll show their cards.
Yeah.
Our manager, God love him, he's awesome, but he doesn't really have a good idea of how to find the right technical fit. Or, we've been kind of brought in here to make sure that we think people are going to fit within the group. We're a pretty tight-knit group. They'll tell you.
We used to tell people that all the time of like, we hire for culture. Because I can teach you what I need, actually would prefer to teach you what I need to teach you.
Yeah.
But if you're not a giver as far as your style of work, if you're not going to be a part of this team and participate, then you're not going to be happy either.
Yes.
Because the whole group is close.
The technical screen component gets a little challenging because these get more and more prevalent. And the reason why is, if you remember back to the Y2K days, which, believe it or not, was only 20 years ago, even though it feels like 100 years ago. Yeah, if you can make the dial-up sound in your head. Or whatever, right? So that was the day where technical skill trumped everything having to do with your interpersonal skills. And that is really leveled out. So you can't just get away with being really a whiz at technical and frankly being sloppy or sucking at communication. But these technical screens, it really matters the nature of the screen. Is it like an online CBT, computer-based training type thing? Is it actually speaking to an individual? again, be inquisitive. If you're dealing with a recruiter, ask them, hey, have you guys had people take this before? What's been the basic feedback? Because we a lot of times have clients that don't understand that this is effing cumbersome. They got people taking 3-4 hour code assessments.
Well, remember I told you about
6, 7, 8 hours of code reviews, and it's a lot.
I told you about Eric's where they know. So my ex-husband was interviewing for some place, and he was told to do this assessment, and it wasn't code based, it was project management based or product management based, but it was at least 8 hours, and they knew it was bad, and they wanted to give him $200, but in order to do so, they wanted him to
They wanted to onboard him as an employee, so fill out all the paperwork.
Yeah,
that's fun.
And he was like, for $200 and a waste of a weekend day, like
a lot.
No,
I mean, let's be honest. If that technical screen was half that size, anyone is dreading this.
Yes,
dreading. Now
you have to love love what you do to not be bothered by that.
It's not a problem per se because it's understandable, and I think most technical experts, technical experienced folks get that. It's just some positions require it and others don't.
Well, here's what I think. And depending on the industry that you are in, and you want to try and curb some of this, you need to have a portfolio. Like if you want to get advanced I think in IT, in marketing, the two that Jeremy and I are aware of, like you should have a website you built. You should have freelance that you've done to just free, like even just pro bono of like, yep, these are the websites I built or that I've optimized or I've marketed or did the logo, and you create a portfolio. So yes, companies will have these assessments, but if you can come to them and be like, yeah, this is just my life, like this is what I do, even if it's not your life, you can show code examples, assessments you've taken on your own just to kind of stand apart. That matters.
Yeah.
For me, that matters. If you are coming to me saying you're super experienced, but you have nothing in your portfolio to be like, I did this, I did that, I did this, I'd be like, well,
yeah, and that's
then it's all talk.
That's prevalent in IT and almost some areas a little bit, and then a lot of areas not so much. But
correct, it depends on your industry.
But 100%. I like what you're saying, because even if you're just a database developer, and I just randomly brought that up, again, I think if you look back at your previous jobs, there might be some proprietary stuff that you couldn't show. But anything from screenshots to examples can never hurt. That's a good point. Now, this might just be a process that they follow through regardless of what you have.
100%. I'm not saying it will get you out of an assessment, because that is not the case. But if you're struggling to get the position that you're looking for, I gave this advice to my brother of like, get on some forums, go get on Reddit, get in GitLab and do some coding, and like be able to come to them and be like, look, I know I'm a help desk person, but here are the things that I'm doing on my own because this is the path I want to take. And then you look for an entry level, you're hopefully for an entry level job for that role or that path. But if you can't show initiative with your career in that way, you do not stand apart. And then same thing with marketing for people, in my realm, the college students, I had this. I was interviewing for a position, and I interviewed 2 men and 2 women. And this is now granted, we're recording this on National or International Women's Day.
Oh, no shit. That's true. That's right. Are you about to prop up women or rip on them?
Prop up.
Okay, go ahead.
I've been told that I hire a lot of women. So that particular day I was like, all right, I'm going to try and put my bias on the shelf, and I'm going to look at these gentlemen very
almost
closely.
Give them more attention than I would normally. Yeah.
Even my assistant, who is
sexist,
Go ahead. I know, I'm just a little privy. So we were sitting there interviewing him, and we get off the interview with the first guy, and my assistant, it was a male, and his name's Brian, and he just dropped his head, and he was like,
in disappointment.
Yes. And then we would do the girl, and she was like, well, and then I did this pro bono thing for my family member. Here's the example. And I joined this group, and I was a leader, and then I did this and I did that, and they looked smart, and they could talk, and they had eye contact, and I was like, okay, well, I'm kind of leaning towards the girl. Yeah. So then we go to the next guy. He barely had a shirt on. Oh. Like, and these were all remote interviews. These were remote. He barely had a shirt on.
Be prepared.
He didn't have any questions prepared. He barely had a thought in his head. And then we go to the second woman and did hers, and she was like the other woman. And I was like, I'm sorry, but I'm hiring the women.
Yeah, who would blame you?
Like, I try, but. And he even said, Brian, he was like, they didn't even show up. Like, they didn't even, he was very disappointed.
Yeah. In IT with these portfolios, I tend to see them with like people like technical writers, a lot of designers, web designers will have these.
100%.
It's very visual. I've seen a lot with a training. People that are in the training field have a big portfolio. I think the idea of just understanding how to back up what you say you're good at.
It doesn't have to be a lot.
What is that? So if you're in an interview setting and you know that this interview is going one particular direction, then maybe you can actually bulk up your experience by volunteering to even send them something afterwards.
Which I have done.
Yeah, I could send you a copy of so-and-so to help give you a sense of comfort that I know what I'm talking about. Whatever that might be. This doesn't necessarily prep you for a technical screen, but it's, again,
we kind of diverted.
You want to learn what they care about and what they're looking for so that you can tailor your answers without making shit up. Just because it's really easy to think where an interviewer is going with their lines of questioning and then go down a road that they didn't want you to.
Correct.
And you unintentionally, and then they have to steer you back.
Yeah.
And that's not really...
Could you ask if the assessment is pass, fail, or... sliding scale, like
how do you grade it?
Like, are you just looking to see if I know it, or is it literally like you have to get done and pass and do it right?
And they should know that, because most of the groups that do this stuff, they're very deliberate. We had everybody in the group take it, and here's our average score so that we want people to score in this range, stuff like that.
Yeah. Or do you have to get you have to get it through it, and it's a pass-fail situation?
Yeah, and we touched on this on the last episode, but, I've worked with people that are the individual technical expert that's doing these phone screens. Basically, I'm the go-to dude in the group, so my boss has me speak to candidates about this stuff. Even just understanding their thought process of how do they go about these screens, or even asking them, you're on the phone, hey, thanks for taking time to talk to me. I understand this is supposed to be a technical based discussion. So are you going to fire questions at me? Do you want me to give you examples of something and then we dive deeper? Just understanding what their goal is and what they're trying to do.
What are they assessing?
The same thing goes with the hiring manager's superior. If you have that guy or gal come in, whether it be at the end of the process or elsewhere, feel free to ask them, hey, how involved in this are you? Do you tend to just kind of give a stamp of approval where it's a good sign that I'm actually meeting with you?
Yeah.
Like at all?
That's what I had. That's what I had. He would even say it.
I must not suck if I got on your calendar.
Yeah.
Something like that.
My last boss, it was like, he would even say, he's like, well, I'm not very good at this. So I'm just kind of meet and greet.
But again, you never know. So that's why I would be inquisitive, asking those things up front. Yeah. Because this executive might be like, yeah. I'm just here to literally shake hands and kiss babies. Like, this is a political thing. Or it might be more of like, actually, to be honest with you, we've really been struggling with having people stay in the group. So we're being a little more deliberate, and I'm involved because we've been having retention issues.
Yeah.
So cool. That's a big thing to learn, or whatever that is, right? So
And you don't know if they're
just being inquisitive throughout the entire process.
Yeah. I was just going to say, you never know if they say that they aren't part of the decision, but they are.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, I'm just here for the meet and greet, and they're just kind of laying low in the weeds watching, when really they do have to give the stamp of approval.
Yeah, totally.
So just assume everyone could be your ex. Like,
I suppose. Yeah, I mean, you should think of it that way, that to a certain extent, people are looking to criticize and disqualify you. But you'll be able to get that notion. If you're doing the basics about being prepared with dressing well, having your ducks in a row, right? The things you were describing about the female candidates earlier, obviously that isn't even really a male-female thing. It just happened to play out that way.
Where I was trying to hire a man, and then it was like, I just can't think of a circumstance where managers are interviewing people and they're like too organized, or
they have too many questions ready to go. I suppose there's certain scenarios.
There's a limit where you're like, oh, well, okay, do you need to give us a colonoscopy or what?
Yeah, but we talked about thank you notes on the last show, and you love these
thank
suckers.
You notes.
So is that required? Of course not. But if you can eliminate the negative notion, like you admitted you'd flat out judge somebody if they didn't send
flat
one.
out.
Yeah. So if your thank you note is to make sure that the Amandas of the world don't talk shit on you in their head, then send a 30-second email.
It doesn't take that long. Well, and that's what I said. It doesn't need to be a novel. Literally thanking them for their time, expressing your interest, and asking, saying you're looking forward to hearing from me. 3 sentences, literally 3 sentences in an email will check the box. And look at who you're interviewing with. Like if you can tell that your hiring manager is a conservative, especially a conservative over older male or female, you better send that letter.
Yeah.
And if you can do a written one, do it, because they're going to have way different values than if you're interviewing someone who's 28, is looking for the hot shot, doesn't really care about thank yous. Doesn't mean he or she doesn't care, but you're more likely to, if you're going to a conservative company or conservative hiring manager, just send it. Like it's way better than losing it over something that should only take you a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's cliche to say, but you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. And we can tell. It doesn't take many questions to understand someone's nerves.
No.
And by nerves, I mean, are you anxious and worried about getting this job, or are you not? Are you already working where you're going into this sucker with a level of swagger because you have a backup plan? Or are you going into this and you've been unemployed for 3 months already and you're damn near paranoid and, worried about paying the bills and putting groceries on the table? Understanding where you're coming from can avoid you to either over-spew on the manager or be too lackadaisical.
Well, and I think it's okay to be human. I think, especially the last 2 years with COVID and everything that's gone on, we've established that we need to let people be human. So if you are really struggling to calm your nerves, take a second, take a breath, and just say, I would not be offended if someone was like, I'm really nervous, and it's because I really want this job because of X, Y,
I've been
Z.
struggling to find a job this cool,
and
or I've always wanted to work for this company, or who cares what it is, right?
I found this job. I looked into the company, and now I'm really afraid my nerves are going to cost
it. Yeah, so if I'm shaking, it's a good thing.
If I'm doing this, it's not because I don't know how to talk to people. I just really am interested.
Right.
And then just take a second, because 2 things. One, you deserve that. You are a human. It's just an interview. It's not, you're not on a panel board to become the next,
Wouldn't that be great?
That be great? President or whatever it is.
Yep.
Like it's just, it is a job.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't respond well to something like that, again, you're interviewing them. Do you want to work for someone who can't just let you take a breath and will let you be a human for a moment? I would say no, personally. If you can't even let me like be a little bit human, I probably don't want to work for you either. That's my 2 cents on that.
No, I think it's great because not enough people go into the process with a good understanding of what they're looking for, with a good understanding of what environments they tend to thrive in. And that stuff matters. You don't want to give them the answers to the test any more than they want to give it to you, right? If you know that if they come in less than 90K, you're turning the job down. Do you bring that up in the interview? At some point, you should have an honest discussion about money, but that doesn't mean that's your first question right out of the gate. So read the room, have an understanding about what you're looking to accomplish, having just your thoughts prepared of why am I looking for a job? What about this entices me? Just being able to articulate those things. It's amazing what those interpersonal interactions can do to give somebody the feeling that you would be a really good fit for what they're looking for.
Well, and it's so funny how different people are because I don't want to waste anyone's time. So at the end of the phone interview, I'm asking what their salary requirements are of like, do you have a minimum like that you have to make? Not that I'm going to give you the minimum.
The range online was this. Is that
accurate? Yeah. Because hey, your range was here, but this is the range for this job. Are you still interested? And be honest. If you're not interested because it's too low, say that.
Yeah.
Don't waste anyone's time. If a company is like, yeah, it's 40 to 60 or 60 to 80 or 80 to 100, and you're like, well, I need to make 130. Yeah. You're like, okay, well, we can't bridge that gap.
Of course. Being honest about what your intentions are and what you're looking for. This is like it's like going on a first date.
Yes.
I don't care how cute she looks with her profile. You got to meet that person to understand if there's a fit here. So don't walk into it with expecting to get every job you interview for.
Well, that's what I said.
If you have one job that you're going for and you're really nervous, the issue is that you only have one job that you're going for. If you're showing up to date one thinking like this better be the chick I proposed to or what have you, then you
got to kiss a lot of frogs.
A little bit.
To find your frog.
A little bit. And I love watching these dating shows with my girlfriend too, because this analogy really makes sense because they're trying to slam a square peg into a round hole. I get it that they're in a fishbowl, they're on a television show, but there is we are supposed to be together. This is supposed to work. And anytime it doesn't, people short circuit. And I think these interview processes can be the same. Let me give you the best example. Every damn time we have a candidate call us after an interview and say something along the lines of, man, I crushed it, nailed it to the wall. They practically offered me the job, etc. That person almost never gets the job. It's amazing. The people that think they killed it, think they had like the best rapport ever. Believe it or not, a sense of a little bit of hesitation, a little bit of I think it went well, but I'm not sure. That is actually a really good sign for both sides.
Do you know why? At least I kind of know why those people think it.
What do you got?
So if I'm interviewing someone and I know that they are not the right candidate, I'm switching to very relaxed, very personable, like we're going to enjoy, very agreeable, trying to get through this. And so, you're going to think you killed it because I'm not doing that intentionally. But if you're not getting asked the tough questions, then they're not that interested.
Yeah.
I'm way harder on someone that I want just for a little bit in the interview because I want to make sure I'm not wrong. And that shows interest. Same thing when in sales, when salespeople get all funny when their clients are asking questions. Like, no. The questions show interest. It's when they stop asking questions and they're just agreeable that you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Like if you are doing a sales presentation and your people stop asking questions and they're just being super agreeable, I would get nervous.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can feel really confident if they're showing you around the department, if they're showing you where you would work. See, I would never do that to somebody.
Not where they would work. We had a cool place, so they wanted to look around.
Yeah, and I try to avoid that doing the walking people around because I think that is a clear buying sign. You and I have joked about this for years where most managers have this little verbal shtick that they go through at the end of an interview.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times when you're walking out and you get we're going through our process or we got a couple of other interviews this week, I'm here to tell you that's a lot of times complete bullshit.
Yeah.
Right?
I always had extra.
Another interview going. We're going to get back to you soon. Mine is I truthfully have people just say, hey, I'm probably what people would like because I'm willing to show my cards in the face-to-face interview and over the phone. But, if I'm interested, I'm going to be showing signs about, anything from start dates to very encouraging language about, joining the team. I think you'd be a good fit.
I wouldn't say that.
There are a lot of good signs, but I think the specific ending of the last sentence, I wouldn't put any emotional credence in that unless they're like, "Can you start Monday?"
Right.
That's different.
I've had that before where I'm like, "Look, this has gone better than either of us would have expected. We need someone. Literally, are you interested?"
Yeah.
Because we can sit here and talk numbers and, I would kick everyone out if it was serious.
So do you recommend somebody asking for the job?
Oh, depends on their level of hurt, honestly, because we always were hurting for people. So if someone was like, I want this job, and if I was interested in them, I would move so fast. I would literally be like, I'm going to go type this up as soon as I leave here. Do you want to wait?
Yeah.
It doesn't take long.
I think it's a good thing, but it doesn't have to be as mechanical as people think it is. It's not necessarily, would you hire me for this role?
Oh God,
it might just be a very definitive statement of your interest.
Oh, so are we at the end of interview questions?
You're at the very end of the interview. I mean,
you guys can't see this, but I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, she's doing jazz hands, which would basically I mean, I'm of the opinion, if you know for sure you like them, I'm intentional to say something.
As the interviewee?
Both, actually.
Both.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm the interviewee and I really like them and it was either everything I had hoped it would be or more, I'm telling them, hey, I'm interested. This excited me. It validated the things that I was hoping that it would be, whatever that is. I think that's cool. It doesn't have to be just as simple as, would you hire me for this job?
Please don't say that.
It's terrible.
Please don't say that. I love this topic, this part of it, because I am a firm believer in giving your elevator pitch at the end.
Okay.
I love it.
Basically, it's your closing paragraph of your 5-paragraph essay.
It is either your soft or your hard close. There are some techniques that will, one, hopefully give you some feedback, whether you did good or not, and then give you kind of an assessment of where they're at.
What do you got?
So, one, you need to practice this. You have to practice it out loud, not just in your head, but verbalize it, look in the mirror, practice this.
Everything you hate about role playing is what you should do.
Correct.
Yes, go.
And then maybe do it in front of a person
Even
after that.
Worse.
Even worse, but better.
Amanda believes that it's worth it. Continue.
It's worth it.
Yes.
So what I have done, so I've had two things. One, let's say the interview didn't go well as you'd hoped, but you really want the position and you can feel that they're hesitant, but you can do the job. I have done this. To give a real quick backstory, I was applying for a DOT job for literally just maintenance at their facility in St. Cloud.
Entry-ish level.
Entry-ish level. But I, was so young, and I came not in like pants and boots and what a maintenance person would look like. I came for an interview, so I was
they might be thinking
up.
You're too dainty.
I've never been called dainty, but but feminine, a little too soft or
for this rough and tumble of a job.
For this rough job with these rough men. And so I knew that when we got to the end, I was not the top candidate. Like, I knew. But I put out a Hail Mary. And I said, look, I know I don't look like I'm right for the part right now. I know that I'm not dressed for maintenance. But I have never, ever walked away from something that I can do. I'm very hardworking. I've worked on a farm. I've done this. And I gave them the example of, like, my uncle also didn't want to hire me, but 2 months down the road, he came in and said I was now his best worker.
Yeah.
I can do this job. And then you go, so I have to ask, what reservations do you have about giving me this position? Because if you hate that you never get feedback after an interview, this is your shot to ask for it. And no, they won't all be honest, but some of them will.
I think you're going to get an honest answer, but it's to the degree.
Gentle.
Yeah, you might get somebody who really gives you what you would want to know. Like, hey, I'll be honest with you, like you would fit. But right,
and then pay attention.
Yeah, you might more often than not, you'll get a softer, more agreeable answer. Whatever
like,
that
well,
is.
I've been on the receiving end of this question and have given the feedback. Then you have the opportunity to rebuttal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're concerned that I will get bored with this job because it's not flashy enough.
Or whatever
it is, and that was my particular.
You could put that in your thank you email too.
And then, because maybe you're someone that's like, I can't. Maybe you're not as on the fly with some of that stuff to come up, of going, oh my God, I really appreciate the feedback. I'm actually going to think on this, and I want to address it. But regardless, I appreciate the feedback because I can't get better without feedback, and just be honest with that. Or if they say, well, you seemed really light in this technology or this whatever, okay, like going the IT route, let's say. Well, now's your opportunity of maybe clarifying something that maybe you just didn't harp on enough in the interview of, like, well, actually, you said 3 years. Can I just explain real quick a little bit more about my experience for there? Because I really care about this job. I really do.
Or I know you'd like A, B, and C, but based on what the team told me, they're really good with A and C.
And I have strong
and
B.
B's kind of my thing. I get it that you might, like, I might be lighter on those other areas than those are, but maybe all of our collective skills balance it out.
Correct.
Utilizing whatever info they gave you.
Please use that last section. Don't be afraid of the feedback. Don't be afraid of asking the question, because I actually smile a little when someone starts to do it, because I look for it. So when they start to be like, hey, I just wanted to tell you, like, this is why I think I'm really good for this, and why I want the job, I can start, here. Please, if you have any reservations after I leave here, I would love to know them. Or maybe even meet to talk again. And that little. And that's one thing. The other thing is your elevator pitch. So you can go 2 different routes. So if it went really well, then you're not going to do necessarily
the objection overcome side. Sure.
You still can, because there could be something that they're not telling you.
I feel like this went really well, but
is there anything I'm missing that you have as a reservation? And if they say no, well, one, you can ask for the job at that point of, like, I don't know actually how I would word that. I would have to prepare that, but you would want to ask for the job, or go, great. Just to recap, I want to say, like, this is why I like this position. This is why I'm a good fit, and I couldn't be more interested. So I really hope to hear from you. That little ending puts you back in control. And it shows so much interest, and it will set you apart. That does stick with a person.
Totally agree. Well, there's your answers, people. We just solved all of them. So if you feel like you are now an authoritative figure on interviewing, I would agree. And I think you should also do your own podcast on interviewing. Very subjective, of course. A lot of this is style. We're
Correct.
just wanting to keep the discussion open because it doesn't need to be scary. Remembering who your audience is really, really important.
Correct.
So if you can't get that information up front, then utilize maybe my recommendation of starting with inquisitive questions to understand where you can go. But the interview process can be tough. Things we didn't talk about in regards to like understanding the process. Of, hey, if they have a multiple step interview and you're at the beginning, you can ask them point blank, hey, when do you need somebody in the door? There's good questions to understand when they need somebody or how quickly they are going to move on the interview process. You can ask questions that are very telling, yet not forcing a decision on them. So, for example, hey, I'm really interested in this role. Based on what you told me, there'll be another interview. So when do you think I would hear back from you? Oh, okay. So does that mean if I don't hear back, then I probably am not a candidate?
Make that clarification.
Should I be following, if you need 3 days, should I be following up on that day? Or are
when can I follow up?
When can I? This is
if it's a sales job, you better keep calling.
Well, it's so funny that you mentioned this because all of this is a damn sales job, right? You meant like if it's a sales role.
If it's an actual sales role.
But this is I don't care what you do for a living. Like this is the one moment where you're a salesperson.
Correct.
So, try and I'm assuming you've picked that up throughout this show, but it needs to be hit home. You're selling yourself.
You are.
And if you think about it, if you walk into a Honda dealer,
and your value. You're selling your value.
Yeah. But you can't know how to sell yourself until you know what they're looking for. So if you walk into a Honda dealership and you need yourself a minivan and the salesperson won't shut up about the Honda Accord, it's because they didn't take the time to understand the basics of why you're here. So if you go into an interview blind and just start talking about all the shit you're really good at, that's great, but that might be just too far left of field for what they want to hear. So that's why if I'm anybody interviewing, I'm asking the questions first to try and get them talking because I can glean some info and then you can kind of navigate from there. That's my best advice for interviewing.
I would I'm going to go the female route here for the women out there, just because it is 100% part of traditionally our nature is to not boast and to not sell ourselves. Literally had this conversation with my mom recently and with many, many, many young women over the last decade of you are not bragging when you sell yourself. Yeah. Stop it. You have value and you've done a good job. Own it. And and the other thing is, own it and be able to articulate it without being cocky, which I would guess if you're concerned about being boasting, you're not going to be cocky. The other thing is, don't say we or the team and I. If you need to own some of this stuff, what did you do on the team? I don't care what your team did. What did you do that made things better, easier, faster, more modern, more whatever it is? What was your contribution? Mm-hmm. And own it. Stop telling. I had one girl. She just kept talking about the team and what the team all did, and I was like, I'm not hiring the team.
Yeah. I want to know how integral of a part of you were on that team.
Are you a natural leader? Did you take a leadership role? If not, that's okay. What did you do instead? Mm-hmm. What was your role and what did you do? What did you contribute? Those are two things that traditionally very much are not female traits to do. Like we just don't do those things. So I've coached so many young women of you need to be your biggest cheerleader. You have to be. It is not egotistical. It is a requirement.
It's not the same because it's different, but I remember all the survey data about men and women versus what jobs they'll apply to.
The verbiage even.
Yeah, because I think men were
job descriptions.
Men were statistically likely to apply for a job if they had at least 60% of what the job said they were looking for. Women were like 90 plus.
Correct.
They wouldn't even apply to it if they didn't feel like they had it all.
I would fall in that category back in my 20s.
Which is a mistake.
Yes, it is. There is no perfect candidate. So I had this, for those listening, I started out of college doing some sales and stuff, and a trainer position with corporate showed up I used to work for LA Weight Loss, and I wasn't going to apply. I was like, I don't have a lot of these requirements, and thankfully, my manager encouraged me to still go for it. I was a landslide for the job. Like, I got it. They were excited about it, and I was great at it. And I would say I probably had 60% of what they were looking for. So don't let that be a deterrent.
And then I'll obviously take that mentality into the interview.
Correct.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, we solved all the world's problems when it comes to interviewing, but if we miraculously miss something, we want to hear about it. Whatever that might be, send us a note over LinkedIn or wherever we put the show out there and you found it, whether it be SoundCloud or Stitcher or Apple or Google Play, obviously where this can be found, YouTube. If you want to send some stuff at us, whether you think we suck or we're awesome, we love that feedback too. I'll be honest with you. I need some more shit talk to me, okay? Because
he does, you guys. He's getting a big head.
That's not true. But I mean, I've had it for sure. But like, kidding. I was told, the more you get out there and we do videos and podcasts and blogs, the more we're either going to sound dumb or say something dumb, and we like to hear it. I want to hear it.
Well, I know that they're watching.
Criticism too.
I know they're watching on LinkedIn. Your last video. I continue
to not believe you, but
the last video was almost 300 views in the last couple days.
Well done, people.
So they're watching.
Yeah, and if you don't know this, a lot of times our little video series are like synopsis of these shows, but a lot of times they're random too. We kind of fell in love with a little bit of this series format, just because you can't get something done all in one episode. So again, episode 1 is already out there if you're hearing this, and that's on the manager side. This is the candidate side. Otherwise, we will come back again with another episode from your Hire and Fire podcast, brought to you by Pyra Consulting, and we'll see you again on the next show. Thank you for listening to the Hire Fire podcast, brought to you by Pyra Consulting. Check us out on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or online at pyraconsulting.com. That's PIRA consulting.com.